Welcome everybody to UCP's 2024 Year in Review. My name is Eric Champa. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for UCP of Sacramento in Northern California, and I get the privilege of walking you through a quick profile of the services and supports that UCP provided to our individuals and families in the previous year. We're going to do some overview of what our programs look like, the folks that we serve, and some data at the end that we've collected for the presentation. So I'm glad you could join us. We like to get started to talk about the history and founding of UCP. So UCP was founded in 1955 by families with children with cerebral palsy. And they banded together to create local supports and a network to support their children who wanted to live in the community. I'd like you to imagine that you're a family member, and in 1955 you've been going to the doctor for years. You know something's been wrong with your son or your daughter, and you've been trying to get a diagnosis. And at some point you have that meeting with the doctor, and the doctor says, well, I have some news. And the news is that your son or your daughter, say about 5-6 years old, they have a diagnosis of autism, or maybe a diagnosis of cerebral palsy or an intellectual disability. And you as a family member, a parent, are going through your mind trying to understand what that means. You knew something maybe was off, but now you're realizing they have a disability, and the doctor tells you that it's a profound level of a disability, that they're going to need lifelong supports, and you should start preparing yourself and your family for the kinds of transitions and needs. And in that moment, you're trying to process everything that's going on. What would often happen in those meetings is doctors would then tell families that the services and supports for their child are provided through state institutions, and that most children with significant disabilities are admitted into these state institutions before age 18, and they live their whole life out in the state institution under state care. And that you as a parent should probably start to prepare yourself for that. And you're free to visit. You could go to this developmental center and visit, but that they would spend the rest of their life likely at a state institution. When I tell that story, most parents are able to relate to the anxiety and the fear that our parents faced in 1955. And we typically are able to then better explain why parents said, no, we don't want to institutionalize our children. We want them to live with us. We want them to live in a community. They should have the same life and opportunities as everybody else has. We don't believe in institutional care. And so from 1955 on, UCP families said no to institutional care and started to develop community-based services. And that's how UCP and other agencies like us were formed to provide community-based supports. And so that's what UCP is founded for. Today, we serve individuals not just with cerebral palsy, with all types of disabilities. In fact, we serve more folks with autism and intellectual disability than with CP. We serve anybody with an intellectual disability that our services can support. And today, our services are focused on supporting independence, productivity, quality of life for folks with developmental disabilities and their families. In 2024, UCP provided services in 4 different divisions. We have our adult division, which is primarily focused on serving adults with developmental disabilities in their homes, communities, and in day programs. We have our respite division, which provides in-home services and supports for families and caregivers that have an adult or minor child living at home with them. We have our recreation division, which provides activities and events and overnight camps and day camps for both kids and adults. And we have our transportation division. What we're going to do next is we're going to profile each of those 4 divisions, talk to you about the services and supports that we provided in those divisions, and the kind of individuals that we support. In our adult division, we have 8 unique programs. 7 of those are adult day programs for adults living in the community, coming to a UCP center with staff. We also offer community-based supports for our independent living program and our coordinated family support program through our CLASP program. The most common diagnosis for individuals in our adult division are intellectual disabilities. More than 60% of our folks served by our adult programs are non-ambulatory, meaning that they either use a mobility aid like a wheelchair or a walker, or need support to move around. Common goals include skill building, community living, independent living, education, socialization. When we offer facility-based services, we have 5 locations in the greater Sacramento area, 1 in Woodland, 2 in the Sacramento-Arden area, 1 in Carmichael, and 1 in Rancho Cordova. Here are some photos of some of the activities of our individuals participating in. The one on the left shows an individual in our independent living program being supported out shopping with their independent living coach. You also see some photos of individuals participating in activities with community members or goals that they have at our different facilities. The second UCP division is our in-home respite division. Respite is a in-home care and support service for individual families that are caring for a loved one. They could be a minor or an adult. So we're providing both a break for the family, but also quality care and supervision for the individual. This is our largest division in terms of number of individuals served, with over 1,600 folks receiving respite service in 2024. And we employed more than 747 respite caregivers in that division. Respite's a service that's really determined by the families and their schedule and what their needs are to get maximum support. So it's a service that can be offered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's really only limited by the needs of the family and their schedule and the schedule of the worker. The majority of our clients in our respite program are under the age 18, 65%, but it's a misunderstanding that only children receive this service. As you can see, 35% of the folks receiving service are over age 18. Many are in their 40s and 50s that still choose to live at home with their parents. So it's also a community housing resource for both children and adults. Respite currently provides services to families in 5 counties. And about half of our respite caregivers, they just work with one family, that they're really dedicated to providing services to maybe somebody they already knew, a community member, a family member, and they work with one family, with the other half of our worker providing services to several families, multiple families. One thing we like to focus on with respite is making sure folks understand why respite is essential. So, of course, we want to provide a variety of services through our respite. One of them is this is a housing option, a community housing option. We want to make sure that respite is available so that it can provide safe and comfortable and preferred housing for individuals with disabilities to live in their communities and not have to live in a residential home. We want to provide support to caregivers so that they feel supported, so that they can focus on their family's health, on their personal health, to make sure that those families are stronger. We want to make sure that the individual receiving supports, whether they're a child or an adult, is receiving safe and compassionate and personalized support for them, and in ways that enrich their lives. And all of our services should be person-centered, meaning it should be focused first on what the individual needs are, and that service should be tailored around them and their families. A couple quick stats on our respite division. We included some pre-COVID numbers to get an idea of where our height was pre-COVID. During COVID, respite, like many social services, really took a hit. Families had trouble using services, but we've been growing steadily since 2001. Last year, we provided about 280,000 hours of respite service. I mentioned our client age, so you can see that as a further breakdown on the right. So you can see a majority of our folks are under the age 18, but we still have a good amount of folks that are in the 30+ age range as well. Our third division is our newest division that we're going to highlight, our recreation division. We launched this recreation division, I should maybe say expanded this significantly in 2022 to really provide more community supports and opportunities for individuals, both children and adults, to socialize, to engage in recreational opportunities within their communities, build friendships. And this has been our fastest growing division over the last few years as well. We average about 79 participants per month. A participant will include somebody with a disability, a child or an adult, but it often includes non-disabled peers, family members, parents, guardians, friends. Other individuals are often participating in these events as well. The majority of our recreation events include a partner like the YMCA or the Mandavi Center or Rancho Cordova or Achieve Tahoe or a bunch of other folks. So the majority of our recreation events, it's us partnering with a community provider that provides services to the general public and saying we want to make sure that we can partner together to provide those opportunities. In some cases, we just provide an event on our own for our folks as well. As part of our recreation division, in addition to events, we do overnight camps and day camps. UCP offered 4 camps last year, a kids camp, a family camp, and adult camp. Those were overnight camps in Portola. And we offered a 1-day camp. There was about 55 UCP events that we sponsored or operated in 2024. These included soccer, skiing, art events. In fact, the next slide just gives you an idea. I'm not going to go through all of this, but we threw some of those events on this slide, just giving you an idea of some of the fun things that we've done, like river rafting and art lessons and skate nights have been pretty popular. One thing that is not well known about recreation is what are the outcomes of recreation? Is it just fun? So it's important that folks understand what the professional development is. What's the outcomes of a recreation program like UCP's? The first is friendship and socialization. We want them to develop deep and meaningful relationships with other folks. Even if they don't develop a best friend at one of our events, we want them to be developing their social skills, their ability to develop healthy relationships so that they can be they can find friends at school or in other areas. So developing friendships, developing social skills are our first goal. Second goal is often a transformative experience. We've all had those moments in our life that stand out that maybe shaped our view of ourselves or our opportunities for the future, maybe encouraged us to pursue a career in the scientific field, or we developed our confidence to do something new. These are things like overnight camps. Is something that we provide, or a scuba diving trip, transformative experience that may shape somebody's future. We want to provide those opportunities. Growth and wellness really focuses on the individual. Maybe there's a skill that they want to learn. Maybe they want to learn how to fish. Maybe they want to learn how to golf. It's confidence building. It's building more self-confidence, more awareness, more skills as they progress in their life goals. And the last goal of recreation is community inclusion. We want to make sure that folks feel a part of their communities and not isolated from it or separated from it. So we want to make sure that folks are engaging with their communities in all of these different areas, meeting folks and participating to the fullest extent that they can in their local communities. Here are some photos of some of our participants in our rec this year. Bottom left corner is a kid at our overnight camp at Portola about to go on the rope adventure course. You see a flag football event that we participate with the general public. Skate night has been a pretty popular activity. A hike and an art activity were just some examples. Our fourth and final division is our transportation division. UCP operates both fixed route and on-demand transportation supports for individuals with disabilities. Our fleet includes 66 vehicles, which include backup vehicles, running services in 3 different counties. These vehicles operate with specialized equipment, specialized training to make sure that we can take folks where they need to be in the community. About 40% of the folks we transport are non-ambulatory, meaning they need to be transported in a wheelchair or with a mobility device. So 100% of our vehicles that we operate today have been modified to include transportation for non-ambulatory individuals. One of the biggest challenges in this field for community-based supports and to fight against institutional care is community inclusion. Somebody can be just as isolated living at home by themselves if they don't have access to transportation in our neighborhoods today. So it's not enough to say we have community-based programs. If they can't access those programs, if they don't have transportation and the resources to leave their home, then we're really not an inclusive society. So transportation is essential to reducing isolation and promoting inclusion. One fun thing this year is we got to launch a pilot to explore how rideshare services could be incorporated, and we were able to provide service to 158 for over about 6 months. We operated a service and we provided service to 158 clients on a rideshare. Learned a lot of good lessons about maybe ways to expand, some creative opportunities to expand this in the future. So in 2024, UCP provided about 140,000 one-way trips for individuals. About 540 folks receive services regularly from our transportation division, not including our recreation divisions where we may take folks to camp, things like that. We drove about 1.3 million miles in our different vehicles. As I mentioned, we had 66 vehicles in our fleet, which includes our backup fleet. So when a vehicle goes in for service, we have a spare that can come in. For that rideshare program, we did about 10,472 trips. Now at our height, we were doing about 2,400 trips a month. That service is no longer was no longer continued with the grant that we had, so it's wound down now. But at our height, if we had continued to do that trip, we would have been doing 2,400 trips or so a month at our height. And as of December, we UCP employed 42 drivers. So that's our 4 divisions. Here you can see our transportation connecting folks. On the left, you see an individual going to one of our ski camps for our recreation, where our buses take folks up there. You can see folks arriving to our day programs and folks going out for other community-based activities. So now that we're done with the profiles, we're going to walk through some important data that we've collected over this last year. So the first is diagnosis. So here at UCP, if you combine all of our programs, 51% of our folks that we serve have autism as a diagnosis. It's the first time that autism has been over 50% as a total of the primary diagnosis for the individuals that we serve. Second is intellectual disabilities at 22%. Other disabilities came in at 13%. Cerebral palsy represent about 10% of the folks that we serve has cerebral palsy as their primary diagnosis. 2 important facts about this is if you look at our different divisions, this average does not hold true. So our UCP's programs often are tailored to support different types of needs. So we see the diagnosis data change based on the type of program that you're looking at. So respite, for example, 61% of our respite families are receiving services for somebody who has a primary diagnosis of autism. Whereas in our day programs, 65% of the folks we serve there, their primary diagnosis is intellectual disability. One other important fact is the shift that we've been seeing over the last 10 years or so. I've included a quote in the most recent governor's budget that talked about this. He says, California developmental services continue to support significant demographic changes. Over the last 10 years, the number of individuals served by regional centers with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, has grown by 156%. While ASD represents 51% of the overall DDS caseloads, ages 3 and older, individuals with ASD make up the majority, or 72% of individuals 0 to 21. What that means is every year more and more folks that are entering into the system have a diagnosis of ASD. And for the first time in our history, more than half of the people, 51%, are now served because of a diagnosis of ASD versus the intellectual disability. So that's been an important change this last year. For age, for the folks we serve, you can see the biggest category here is 35% of our folks are under age 17 because of our respite services, but UCP provides services throughout the lifespan. In fact, we've got 7% of our folks, or 9% of our folks that are over age 61. Other demographics we're often asked for are county, ethnicity, and gender. So 72% of our services are in Sacramento, but the remaining 38% are in other counties, primarily Placer, Yolo, and El Dorado counties. The ethnicity spread is pretty similar to the counties that we serve. We've looked at this several times, so this is pretty representative of the Sacramento and Yolo counties as far as our ethnicity groups. And here at UCP and most other providers, our gender skews towards male. And that is primarily due because the ASD, or autism spectrum disorder, is more frequently diagnosed in men than women. So since ASD now represents a majority of caseloads, it skews our population male. Workforce, UCP is in the business of providing trained and competent and caring staff members. That's the service that we provide to individuals with disabilities. So staff is required. Providing trained staff is the mission of UCP. So 81% of our staff are employed in respite, 11% are in day programs, 6% are in transportation. And majority of our folks are part-time because of our respite division. Most folks in our respite division are part-time. So 80% of our total employees are part-time employees, 20% are full-time. Staff hours worked year over year. You can see our hours have increased, and that's because we've been increasing and expanding and reopening services since COVID. We provided over 615,000 hours of service to clients last year. And we look at our hours worked by division. You can see respite's about half, day programs are about a quarter, and then transportation, admin, and recreation represent the other quarter. Staffing levels, just like most social services, COVID really hit our workforce hard to a low of 731 folks. We've been steadily increasing that number since 2021. We've been increasing every year. When we ran our report in December, we had about 950 individuals employed with UCP. So as you see that number of people employed grow, you also see an increase in our total individuals served of 2%. But as you'll see next, you'll also see our service hours go up. So we served approximately 3,094 individuals last year. That's 2% more than the year before. And when we break that out by division, you can see respite's the majority, followed by our recreation department has been growing the fastest. So a lot of 641 folks were served in recreation, 540 in transportation, and 310 people served in day programs. When we say an individual served, that person may have been served for one day, or that person may have received services 5 days a week for 52 weeks in the year. So we also track service hours. This is our best indicator of value provided to an individual with a disability, an hour of service that they've received. So when you look over the last 3 years coming out of COVID, our service hours have increased the most. We have a 13% year over year increase in our service hours. Respite remains the highest number of service hours with almost 280,000 service hours. Day programs, even though they represent 15% or so of our clients, they represent about 34% of our service hours as an organization. So these are folks that typically are receiving services multiple days, 6 hours a day for multiple days every week. Transportation provided about 140,000 service hours of individuals riding on the bus, and recreation provided 971,000 hours, for a total of 709,000 service hours this last year. That's the end of our presentation. So I want to thank you for joining us, maybe learning a little bit more about the services we provided and the folks that we support.